Welcome. You are here because you seek something different, something beyond the ordinary. Here, voices from the unknown will guide you through forgotten tales, eerie mysteries, and whispered secrets. You may listen, but be warned. Some stories linger long after they are told. Now, shall we begin? Hogwarts, a place of knowledge, of discipline, of power, and yet a place of whispers. If you listen closely, beyond the chatter of students, beyond the scratching of quills on parchment, you may hear them, the voices of the past, the echoes of those long forgotten. You think you know this castle. How foolish. Hogwarts does not reveal itself so easily. It keeps its most fascinating stories buried, waiting for the curious, the reckless, the unfortunate. Tonight, I shall tell you one such story, one that does not appear in your textbooks, nor by the diaries of those who once roamed these halls. It is a tale whispered only by the castle itself, to those who dare to listen. There is a door, deep beneath the castle, one that no student nor professor claims to have opened. Yet it has always been there. It is not on any map. It does not appear on the marauder's parchment. And yet, if you were to wander too far into the dungeons, where the air is thick with dust and silence, you might find it waiting for you. There are things in Hogwarts that should not be touched, should not be seen, should not be opened. And yet there is always one who does not listen, one who believes they are different, one who believes warnings are meant for someone else. His name was Ulrich Moore, a Ravenclaw, bright but insufferable. He had a fascination with things that should have been left alone. He thought himself immune to the whispers, to the warnings, to the weight of the air pressing against his chest. So when he wandered too far into the dungeons, when he placed his hand upon that door, Hogwarts held its breath. At first, nothing happened. The world remained still. The torches flickered. The dungeon air was thick with dampness, the scent of stone and dust pressing in from every side. His fingers pressed harder, as if demanding an answer from the wood, and then it exhaled, not a sound, not a creak, not the groan of wood shifting under pressure. No, this was something else, a breath slipping through the cracks in reality itself, a sigh, ancient and knowing, as though something on the other side had finally noticed him. The torches dimmed. A gust of air, cold and unnatural, swept through the corridor, not from in front of him, not from behind, but from beneath. And then the wood moved, not swung, not pushed. It did not obey the laws of physics nor the logic of hinges. No, it unfolded. The grain of the wood split apart like peeling skin, revealing. I will not describe what was behind that door. You wish to know what happened next. Very well, but some doors, once opened, refuse to close. The door unfolded before him, revealing nothing, not darkness, not a void, nothing. Ulrich Moore had expected something, a secret passage, a hidden chamber, a forgotten library brimming with ancient knowledge. But what he saw was far worse, because it was empty, and yet not. The moment his eyes met the space beyond that threshold, something changed. The weight of the castle, the very air around him, seemed to shift. The torches behind him flickered, as though the dungeon itself had drawn breath. And then he heard it. It was not a voice, not quite. It was a suggestion of a voice, a thing that had forgotten how to form words, but remembered the shape of them. A murmur slipping through the air like silk unraveling, soft, insidious, calling him, inviting. Pym, a lesser mind would have fled. A wiser mind would have never come this far. But Ulrich Moore was neither of these things. He stepped forward, and the door closed. Not slammed, not locked, just ceased to be. The dungeon was silent once more. The torches steadied, the dust settled, and Hogwarts exhaled. Ulrich Moore was never seen again. But Hogwarts never forgets, not truly. You may not find Ulrich Moore's name in the records. You may not hear it spoken in the halls. Professors do not mention him. His dormitory was reassigned. His books returned to the library. His existence erased. And yet, the castle remembers. Asterisk, there are things you will not notice unless you are searching. An empty seat at the Ravenclaw table, one that no one seems to fill. A bed in the dormitory that no one ever chooses, as if an invisible presence still lingers within its sheets. A set of robes in the laundry, embroidered with a name no one recalls. You may think these are coincidences, tricks of the mind. After all, how can you remember someone who was never there? But Hogwarts does not forget. And sometimes it remembers in ways you would rather it didn't. Have you ever wandered the castle alone, truly alone? Have you ever walked a corridor you swore did not exist before? Turned a corner and found yourself in a place that should not be there? Perhaps you have. Perhaps you haven't. But someone always does. And they always find the same thing. A door. A door that should not be there. No handle. No keyhole. No way to open it. If you listen, if you truly listen, you may hear something beyond it. A name, his name. Doors do not simply disappear. You may believe that once Ulrich Moore stepped through that threshold, it was over, that the castle sealed its secret, that the whispers faded, the passage vanished, and Hogwarts returned to its slumber. How naive. Nothing is truly lost in Hogwarts. Nothing is ever truly gone. The door still waits. It does not appear often. Years may pass, decades, even, and then, one night, a student will wander just a little too far. They will not mean to. No one ever does. Perhaps they are chasing the fading glow of a luminous spell. Perhaps they are fleeing something worse. But always, always, they will find themselves in a place that should not be. A corridor that does not exist on any map. A passageway where the torches burn lower, where the air is heavy with something unseen. And at the end of it, a door. The door. No handle, no keyhole, no seams in the wood. And yet, waiting, it does not call out. Not at first. It is patient. It remembers, and it knows. It will not be ignored forever. One day, someone will place their hand upon it again. And the cycle will begin once more. You think this is merely a story, a legend whispered through the halls of Hogwarts. Nothing more than a cautionary tale told to frighten young minds. How unfortunate, because stories, when told often enough, have a way of becoming real. Years passed. The door remained unseen, unfound, unopened, and then someone knocked. His name was Callum Wright, a Slytherin this time, intelligent but reckless, a boy who knew the castle better than most. He had spent years navigating the secret tunnels, finding paths others had long forgotten, and perhaps that was his mistake. Because one night the castle gave him a path it had not given before. It was meant to be a shortcut, a way back to his dormitory after curfew. And yet, when he turned the last corner, he found himself somewhere else, somewhere wrong. The corridor stretched longer than it should have. The torches flickered, their flames weak and unsteady. The air had changed, no longer filled with the familiar dampness of the dungeons, but thick with something unseen, something pressing against his skin. And at the end of it, the door, waiting. Callum hesitated, but only for a moment. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. He reached out. His fingers barely grazed the wood before it knocked back. Callum Wright was given something Alric. Moore had not a choice. The door did not open immediately. It did not simply vanish from sight, swallowing him whole. No, this time it lingered, as though considering, as though waiting for him to understand. But the moment stretched too long. His breath caught in his throat. His mind screamed at him to move, to run. And for once in his life, he listened. He turned, and behind him, the corridor was gone. He was no longer in the dungeons, no longer in Hogwarts. He was nowhere. And then he ran. He did not know how long, did not know in which direction, but suddenly pain, his hands against cold stone, the scent of damp air rushing back to him, and the sound of something slamming shut behind him. When he opened his eyes, he was back. The corridor was as it had always been. The torches steady, the door gone. Callum Wright never spoke of it, but he was never the same. Most would have believed it ended there. Callum Wright escaped. The door vanished. The castle returned to normal. But Hogwarts does not forget, and neither do doors. For years, Callum Wright walked these halls in silence. He did not seek out hidden passages again. He no longer wandered alone after dark. He became careful, distant, but it did not matter, because he was not the one searching anymore. The door was... It started with whispers, not the usual ones. The castle always murmurs, after all. The wind through the corridors, the portraits conversing in hushed tones. No, this was different. Callum heard his name, not spoken, not called, just there, beneath his breath, beneath the air itself. At first, he ignored it. He pretended it was nothing. But then came the dreams. He would wake in the dead of night, his skin damp with sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. The details always slipped away the moment. He opened his eyes, but the feeling remained. And always, always, he woke facing his door. Not the door, not yet. One night, Callum Wright woke to silence. Not the comfortable kind. Not the kind that comes with the settling of an ancient castle. No, this silence was different, wrong. He sat up slowly. The air in his dormitory was thick, unmoving. The torches in the corridor beyond his door flickered, dimmer than usual. He had the sudden, unshakable feeling that he was being watched. And then he saw it, not at the foot of his bed, not looming in the shadows. No, it was far worse than that. It was where his door should have been, not the entrance to his dormitory, not the familiar, worn wood he had seen every night. For years, the door, waiting. This time, it did not need to call him, because this time, it had come to him. Some doors are not meant to be found, but when they remember you, they will always find you. You want to understand, to know what it is you have been listening to, what it is that lingers beneath Hogwarts, waiting, watching. Very well, but you may find that some answers are far worse than ignorance. Hogwarts is ancient, older, lithe than its founders, older than the stones that shape its walls. And like all ancient things, it has layers beneath the classrooms and corridors, beneath the chambers and catacombs. There are places untouched by time, places where magic does not behave as it should, places that even the castle itself does not claim. The door is one such place. It does not belong to Hogwarts. It does not belong anywhere. There is no record of its creation. No spell has been able to trace its origins. It has simply always been. But doors have a purpose, do they not? A door must lead somewhere. So where does this one lead? The better question is, what does it let through? You assume the door is a trap, that those who step through are lost, that they disappear into some void, never to return. You are wrong. The door does not take. It exchanges. For every student that vanishes, something else comes back, not in their place. No, no, that would be too simple. It is not immediate. It does not happen all at once, but slowly. Pieces of them return, a flicker in the torchlight, a shadow moving. When no one is there, a whisper too close to the ear, too familiar to be ignored. And then, one day, someone else hears their name being called, and the door waits again. There is an unspoken rule in Hogwarts, a truth older than the founders themselves. The castle gives, and the castle takes. Knowledge, power, protection, but all magic comes at a cost. Perhaps the door is that cost. Perhaps it has always been here, watching, waiting, ensuring that balance is kept. Or perhaps it is simply hungry. You believe that all things can be controlled, that magic is a force to be wielded, bent to one's will, that knowledge is power, and with enough of it, even the most impossible doors may be closed. Foolish. But then, someone always tries. It was not a student this time, nor was it a reckless fool chasing forbidden knowledge. No, this time it was the castle itself that had enough. The attempt was made by 3. The first, a professor of ancient magic, a woman whose name is not recorded in any book, perhaps by choice, perhaps by necessity. The second, a keeper of secrets, a guardian of Hogwarts wards. You would call them a caretaker, but their duty extended far beyond sweeping floors and polishing armor. And the third was not meant to be there. But the castle does not make mistakes. And so, on the night the attempt was made, they were all 3 summoned. They did not find the door. The door found them. No maps, no searching, no whispered spells or hidden keys. It was simply there, as though it had always been waiting for this moment. The professor knew what was required. The spells, the incantations, the ritual to sever the link between this world and whatever lay beyond that threshold. It was delicate, dangerous. The castle's magic itself had to be used, force so bold, so deeply woven into the foundations of this place, that to touch it was to risk unraveling far more than intended. And yet they proceeded. They were fools. The spell was spoken, the wand movements precise. The air crackled with power, thick and suffocating. The torches dimmed. The stones beneath their feet trembled, and the door began to change. Its edges blurred, its form distorted, as though it were unraveling. The whispers behind it rose furious, desperate. For the first time, the door resisted. But Hogwarts is old, and so was the magic being used against it. It was working, and then it stopped. Not because the spell had failed, not because their magic was not strong enough, but because something on the other side did not wish to let go. The castle had given its power to close the door, and in return, the door demanded something back. The professor knew. In that moment, she understood. You cannot take without giving. You cannot seal without replacing. The door would close, but not before it claimed one of them. 3 entered that corridor, only 2 left. No one speaks of them. No one remembers their names. And perhaps That is the way it must be. But the door is gone now, and you will never find it again, will you? And so, the door is gone. No student will stumble upon it again. No foolish wanderer will place their hand upon its cursed wood. No whispers will call out in the dead of night, "It is over," or so you would like to believe. Tell me, does Hogwarts truly forget, or does it simply wait? Perhaps you will never see it. Perhaps you will walk these halls for years and never find the corridor that should not exist. Never feel the air grow thick and heavy. Never hear the whisper that sounds just a little too close. Perhaps you are safe. But then again, one day, a student will take a wrong turn. One day, a candle will flicker in a way it should not. One day a shadow will move when no one is there to cast it. And one day someone will hear a whisper, not loud, not urgent, just a name they have never heard before. And when they turn, they will see it. Doors do not disappear. They only wait to be opened again. You have listened. You have followed every whisper, every shadow, every secret hidden within these walls. But Hogwarts keeps its mysteries close. Perhaps you will leave here satisfied that this was nothing more than a tale, a warning wrapped in superstition. But tonight, when you close your eyes, when the silence stretches a little too long, when the shadows in the corner of your room seem a little darker than before, you may wonder, was it only a story? Be careful where you wander.